Oh, hi. Welcome to Say It, I Dare You, the podcast where we pull apart the personal meanings of taboo and hard to say words and phrases with lovely guests and some gentle peer pressure. Today, we are talking about the word miscarriage. I would like to start with a quick little trigger warning that although this episode is intended to be insightful and healing and educational and all of the good things, it might also be hard to listen to for those who have experienced or been affected by miscarriages in their lives. First and foremost, sending you love. And secondly, please take care of yourself in the listening of this podcast. 10 to 20% of known pregnancies end in miscarriage, meaning this is an experience that affects many, many people and families, and it isn't nearly talked about enough given the grief and the pain that often comes with it. I'm Quinn, and today we are joined by Niveen, a marketing and communications expert from Toronto who immigrated to Canada from Iraq with her family at 12 and experienced a miscarriage during her fertility journey and was gracious enough to join me to talk about it today. Hi, Niveen. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Niveen's an entrepreneur with a solid gold jewelry business named after her grandmother and her daughter, Rashida. She is a soft soul with a knack for feel-good conversations and a courageous woman who suggested this episode topic after discussing that she kind of didn't really have content like this when she was experiencing this for herself. I feel really honored to be the one that gets to listen and learn from your experience, and I hope that this episode helps some people feel less alone in this difficult conversation if you're listening. I always like to start my episodes with a similar question. So, Niveen, tell me more about why you relate to the word miscarriage and why you think it's an important topic for people to be talking about.
Thanks for having me, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. You and I were chatting at Queer Tech, and you're telling me about your amazing podcast. And at that time, I want to say a couple of days before then, one of my close friends had experienced a miscarriage. So they were kind of on my mind a little bit. And then on top of that, obviously, it was kind of bringing up some grief for me around what I had experienced about 7 years ago. It just felt like kismet a little bit. Mm-hmm. So when you were talking about the podcast, I kind of was like, have you talked about miscarriage? Because I was curious, honestly. At first I was like, because I would love to listen to it or share it with my friend who might want to just kind of help her reflect. So that's why.
I felt very excited. The word miscarriage has been on the list of Say It, I Dare You podcast topics because, of course, it's such a taboo word. There's so much societal pressure around whether or not we speak about it or not. But it also wasn't something I was about to message somebody I knew who had a miscarriage and be like, hey, you down? I knew that, like you said, these things have to happen more organically because there is also a process in being ready to talk about these things. And it's not my place to ask someone to talk about it. So knowing that you felt like you could be the voice for this was really exciting because I loved talking to you and knowing more about your experience, but also loved the idea that you could provide content and comfort for people who were going through something that you could have used content and comfort for back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if I'm comfortable being the voice of anything.
Yeah.
I am a marketer, so I facilitate voices.
Yes.
I think for me, it's 7 years ago, and I told you earlier, I needed to go through the questions and kind of write down some of the answers because I was still getting emotional as I was viscerally crying as I was writing answers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh gosh, I think I need to kind of pour out. So it was answering the podcast questions / journaling session.
Yeah. Love
for
that.
me. Yeah. So it was a great opportunity to kind of just also revisit some of those feelings with fresh eyes now today with what I know versus back then in the moment.
Yeah. And I hope that these questions are challenging enough that it helps you move through things, but not so challenging that it hurts you. Because also, as much as we're all for gentle peer pressure on this podcast, you literally never have to talk about something you don't want to talk about. And I will take that to my grave. It's
You're
a
little
it's a little counterintuitive to say that this podcast is about forcing people to get uncomfortable, but my therapist is always there's a window of tolerance, and I'm never going to take someone out of the window of tolerance. For those that don't know, it's obviously 0 to 10, and 10 is you're literally about to have a panic attack. You can't imagine talking about it. If you're there, then you don't do therapy about it. that day. Like, you don't ever do therapy at a 10 in the window of tolerance. You do it at like a 7. You're uncomfortable, but you're okay. You're safe.
Yeah.
We're not going to make this an unsafe space.
Thank you.
I want to know more about why you think this word is so taboo.
I think this word is taboo because we have built so much meaning behind the opposite. And what I mean by that is, like, if you go back as far as like ancient civilizations, we've created goddesses around fertility and birth and pregnancy. And it's always been looked at with like so much joy and empowerment and hope, which is obviously like incredible. It is the miracle of life. You're creating life itself within your body. But I think for me was like, what's the flip side of that? The flip side of that is feeling like your body is not functioning, air quotes here, as it should, additional air quotes, and feeling that like you are not performing your duties per societal pressure, roles, etc.
Literal like Grecian goddess pressure.
Grecian goddess, like legit being like, look at me birthing hips. They were making like vases out of like wide birthing hips. Like, I think there's just so much pressure around the opposite that we've just kind of ignored the other side of it.
Yeah.
So when you experience a miscarriage, there is no ritual. There are no words. There's no language. We don't know how to deal with it. And when you're somebody that is grieving from pregnancy loss, whether you're the person who was carrying or you're the partner of or friend, you kind of are just literally physically and figuratively met with like a massive void.
Yeah.
Which is so hard to deal with.
Yeah. And without the only words for that void, I love the way you put it as opposite, because I think societally, like you already touched on some of it, there's this air of getting it wrong or not being good enough, which like, hi, being a woman in society, but also when the only language around the opposite is positive, it's hard to then imagine that the language around not being able to provide positive, it has to be negative.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we all perceive pregnancy versus lack of pregnancy. And so I can imagine, I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth here, but I know from other people who I know who've experienced it, it comes with a lot of shame.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Not just for you, but also, you said you've helped a friend through that. Like, what do you think shame does as part of the, I'll say ritual, but lack thereof for folks who have lost pregnancy?
I mean, for me, it was wrapped up, with so many different parts of my identity. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. It took us 2 years to get pregnant. So when I finally got pregnant, like this, like lifting of pressure off my shoulders, was like immense. Yeah. So for that to be, in a sense, feel like taken away was incredibly hard to feel. But as a plus size brown woman, the healthcare system has not exactly been the kindest to us. So I think for me, that shame was not just tangled up with like being a woman. It was also tangled up in being a plus size woman whose literally entire life has been, I feel, or I'm unwell, or I'm going through. And it's always kind of been shoved under the umbrella of being a fat person. Yeah. Like, it's your weight. If you lose a little bit of weight, you'll be better.
Yeah. Oh, we talk about that in the fat episode. Please listen to it, because we could get so far into that. But like, healthcare for plus size people is messy and bad.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and I have been the catalyst of conversations about just pregnancy and miscarriage in general, where I've realized that there are so many people, even people who have a uterus and can carry a baby, who don't know anything about pregnancy or pregnancy loss. That 10 to 20% of miscarriage, or of pregnancies ending in miscarriage, is a statistic that I think shocks a lot of people. I think it's otherwise known as like 1 in 5 pregnancies end in miscarriage. that is a high number for how little we talk about it. That is a high number for how little we even acknowledge that those experiencing a miscarriage are not only experiencing grief, but are also experiencing a medical emergency.
1,000%.
It's so not talked about. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Did you find that your body goes through something? And please, like, if you are not comfortable answering this question, don't. We support it. Your body is going through something.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like that was part of your pregnancy loss journey, that you had to hide from people, that there was also physical symptoms amongst the grief, or the opposite? Did you feel like you hid the grief behind the physical symptoms?
Yeah. I think it was more of a lump sum. I'm a direct and fairly open book type person. And so I was, to a degree, comfortable speaking about it, but I could see people being uncomfortable that I'm comfortable. Like, as if, like, are you not sad enough? Or are you not embarrassed? But they didn't understand that that's how I knew I wasn't by myself in this. Because when I brought it up, the amount of women in my community, in my group of friends or colleagues at work, that came up and have been like, oh yeah, I had like 4 miscarriages before I had my son. And I was like, yeah, we've been working together for 5 years, so that we know you came to the office.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you didn't take like leave and it's just kind of shocking. Like, for me, that was just mind-boggling, and it was eye-opening to see how many women experience that. It was exceptionally uncomfortable for, I would say, my partner and I'm Arabic, so we're more free maybe with our feelings,
right?
Versus my partner who's Canadian and like less so, like
Westernized culture.
Yes, westernized culture. Like, feelings are uncomfortable, and if something's uncomfortable, like, we don't really talk about it. So I could tell my partner was dreading having the conversation with their parents. And at the time, it was early in the pregnancy, so like literally it was just our parents who knew, and like my best friend, and that was it. Like, it was 8 weeks in, so we didn't want to obviously announce anything yet at that point. But somehow just even talking about it with his parents, like, was so challenging. To the point where, like, when we kind of got together, because it was close to the holidays at the time when it happened, when we got together, I had people just kind of like curtly say one line to me, and like, and I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. And they're like siblings of my partner who knew, would just like pretended like it didn't happen, or, so it's just
crazy.
Absolutely.
I think it's even just the fact that it's kind of normalized to not tell anyone. I can completely respect and understand that some folks just choose not to.
Yeah.
But traditionally, or kind of most acceptably in Western culture, we wait until 12 weeks to start announcing a pregnancy. That is because of the high risk, the 1 in 5 risk of loss at the beginning of a pregnancy. But what it also means is that miscarriages often happen alone, with you and maybe your partner, maybe that close friend or that parent that you decided to tell before your 12-week mark. Miscarriages very frequently happen in silence, in darkness, and alone. And I haven't even been through one, and like just saying those words makes me feel emotional, because loss should never happen alone.
No.
Grief should never
absolutely
happen alone.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that you had your friend and even your colleagues who brought that comfort to you. I think you said you were comfortable talking about it.
I was, yeah.
Did you ever feel like you couldn't talk about it with people?
I think it was it's energy. Like, I don't know. This is gonna sound
you don't have to explain that at all. I know exactly what you mean.
I'm like, this is gonna sound so hokey, but it's energy. Like, I can almost sense, like, if it came up, like when the air is getting sucked out of the room, and that's when I kind of like close up immediately. I'm like, oh, this is not the space, which is fair, because like, I mean, I'm not walking to a party and being like, so about my miscarriage a couple months ago, you know what I mean? Like, but still, even if it's just like being with a friend, but yeah, like it was odd, that feeling of just sort of an invisible elephant, if that is even like a way to describe it. Like it's there, it's happened, but everyone's just kind of like
not discussing it
at all.
I wonder if there's,
or it's not even about not discussing it. It's literally like it doesn't even happen. You know, like it doesn't even come up in conversations around pregnancy and birth, and like it just does not even come up as a medical situation that might take place as part of your pregnancy, fertility journey, whatever you want to call it.
It's, people often find discomfort in making other people uncomfortable, and forget that as humans, like the best way we can connect with each other is being uncomfortable together. Vulnerable. In my opinion, it's vulnerability. And did you notice any patterns of like who, what, where, when, why, how was the air sucked out of the room versus like the light and comfort brought to you? When was the energy right? When was the energy wrong? Were there patterns around it?
I mean, yes, there were. Like, I felt like I was definitely more comfortable around women than, you know, I would say cishet like men, because they just like did not know what to do.
Yeah, like you can't even say the word tampon in front of them.
Like did not know what to do, even if I like, though they were my friends or, you know, family members. I think there is a cultural element. Like when I experienced my miscarriage, I had to leave my house and my partner, and I wanted to go home to my parents' place. My brothers were still living at home at that point, and my room was still a shrine preserved to my existence. Yes. Thank you, Mom. So it was like, exactly. Like, so I remember going back and just like dropping like the weekend bag and just being like, okay, I need to be here. I need to be here. I need to smell my mom's cooking. I need to feel my like old bedroom. I need to hear my brothers like arguing about something ridiculous. It was like being cocooned all over again. I loved the feeling. I can sob like in my mom's lap, and she will absolutely never like be like, it's too much, or, you know, it'll be fine. Yeah. Like none of that. It's like the feelings are welcome and accepted. And I think for me, the key part about it was there was an element, while it was safe escape, because I can still pour my feelings out, but it took me back to a time before I was a grown up where I had to deal with this kind of shit. Yeah. You know, like I needed the comfort of being like 19-year-old Niveen who didn't have to deal with these big, huge adult problems. Like just needed to go back in time a little bit. It was the closest I got to a time machine.
Well, and it, you know, we talked about how oftentimes people will go back to work, or in the death episode, I think, to quote myself, I said, it felt rude that the world didn't stop because my world stopped. Yeah. And that, like, that time machine is that ability for the world to stop. But there are so many people who just pick up and go back to work the next day. Absolutely. Because that's what we've been taught is the right thing to do. Yeah. I'm so thankful that you had that time machine and that space and that place to cry. I think it has to have been a part of what makes you so brave about this.
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. Like my mom is, she can hold, I've never seen a single person hold so many feelings, because my feeling is like, my family's high feelings. Love. So for our matriarch to like be able to handle all those feelings, like bless, you know, like I'm like, you are so powerful. Yeah, I think the safety that she creates by her calmness, her patience, her, not that she allows the feelings to come out, but she creates the space for it to come out. And she has no problem quietly crying with you, because I mean, at the end of the day, she experienced a loss as well that was significant for her. Like my mom was counting down the minutes for that grandchild. Yeah. But it didn't stop her from grieving with me. Yeah, like there was, I'm sure, like an element of communal grieving that was helpful for both of us, but also the space to do that independently, however I wished. And I know that a lot of people don't have the privilege, but the reality is I called work and I was like, if I'm using whatever X sick days or whatever, like whatever you want to do it. But this is what's happened. And I'm not coming back for the week.
Yeah.
And I was lucky as well to be working, somewhere that was comfortable, like being like, yep, here's your 6 days. Do what you need to do. We'll see you whenever you're ready to come back.
Yeah. We need more people like Niveen's mom in this world. And it's a really great segue into my next question, because you've also been a support person for people in your own life who have experienced a miscarriage. What was that like for you as someone on the other side of that same experience?
I felt gutted because I knew how hard it was. And it's just, I was like, shit, like I really, like while I knew it happened, you kind of like, it's one of those things you don't wish to happen on anyone. And I wanted, like, I think I did literally I actually like straight up olive branched it by reaching out to my friend and, checked in a few times and was like, do you want to grab a meal? And when I showed up to dinner, I brought a plant with me. I was propagating my spider plant, and I took like one of them and put it in a pot and sent it her way. And I gave it to her and I was like, I love you as someone who's experienced this. Like, this is my way to be like, we're unfortunately part of the spider plant where we experience pregnancy loss, and it's this connection, it's this tether, because unfortunately with miscarriage comes this kind of sense of like, move on quickly. And I wanted to acknowledge that it happened, and maybe this little plant will help her look at it and know that it's happened, but know that she is strong enough to move on and move forward.
I know a lot of folks who experience a miscarriage will keep like a baby item or something that they had used as kind of a symbol of excitement for what could have been, and keep it as a memory. And as it sounds like there was like a symbolic element to your support as well. And I definitely think, like, for those that haven't experienced a miscarriage but are in the orbit of someone who have experienced a miscarriage, do you have any advice for like how they should approach these conversations and loving people who are going through it?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you unfortunately had somebody that like experienced this, let them lead how they grieve. Like, I think a lot, we kind of try and go into fix it mode. Like, how do I fix this? How do I make XYZ person feel better? And we do that with a lot of like issues that, obstacles, challenges we go through life. But I think let like yourself grieve, let the other person grieve and figure it out for yourself. I think that people in the orbit of folks who have experienced pregnancy loss do sometimes get lost in the shuffle a little bit, and sometimes don't necessarily get the opportunity to process it. Because like, I think about my siblings, for example, like I know that they had built things in their head about being called like Ammu in Iraq, like in Arabic, and being like, this is gonna be like, I'm gonna be an uncle and this is gonna feel so good, and what kind of uncle they're gonna be, like, and then to have that, like, the whiplash of miscarriage is very strong and real. Yeah, it's just because it does feel like a snatching, in a odd way.
I definitely, someone very close to my heart who I love dearly went through a miscarriage last year. Someone close to my inner circle. And first and foremost, my heart broke for their family, because I mean, that's their family. And I remember having discussions with my partner after it happened and being like, how do you explain to people that you lost something that, I'm going to put this in air quotes, doesn't exist? Because the moment you find out you're pregnant, this life exists.
Yeah.
And we're not getting into the details of, you know,
we're talking about post.
We're talking about post life. Yeah. Not getting into the details of when you can terminate a pregnancy for health reasons, yada, yada. Not here, not now. However, how do you explain to someone that although this person's not here, you knew them? And even, I wasn't even the carrying person. Yeah. And I knew this baby. I felt like I did. Yeah. Yeah. And it was before my partner and I got married and we had a child-free wedding. And it went, the very first thing we said was like, well, our wedding can't be child-free. This kid has to be at our wedding. Yeah. And all this excitement. I had already started looking on Etsy for tiny little outfits. And that was my role as not a parent. And so maybe because I was close enough that I also felt the loss, I was able to process it differently. I feel like there's this stigma around these conversations. And I want to know more about like why you think the stigma is there. Not just why it's hard to talk about, but societally, like how do we get there?
Oh my gosh. I mean, like the stigma is there because generally we don't, this is why we struggle a bit talking about like mental health and any, you know, physical disabilities, etc. Like we don't like to talk about our bodies not doing what we've kind of been forcing them to do for some odd reason. I mean, I know why. Capitalism, patriarchy. Colonialism, you name it.
I think capitalism has been mentioned in every single episode in this season, and I'm so happy about it. It's just like capitalism and the pressures of being a woman is actually what this podcast is about. Sorry. Carry on.
We're renaming it, right?
We're renaming it, yes. Yeah. But like, you're right. Yeah. It's the reason why we all feel like shit all the time.
Trying to meet this imaginary life that are built by people who have no idea, like that they think that there is somehow a factory that produces life and we should all buy the same life from that factory. It's super odd. But I think I think that is the challenge. It's like speaking about anything difficult in life. We've just we've brushed it under the rug. I do think that's changing. Which is like podcasts, like, you know, social media, etc. Like it's been incredible watching how digital has created so many more channels and outlets for people to have these hard conversations and be able to kind of say, here's what I went through. And I hope, like, even if you're not ready to talk about it, that whenever you do, you can feel empowered to share that experience. Because especially I think for Canadians, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like,
yeah. And what was helpful for you during that time? Like, I know it was a while ago, and so social media and forums, they've evolved, but like content, community, care, connection, like what are the things that brought you comfort?
I think outside of family, you know, like my best friend is a huge support. I'm very lucky I was able to lean on her and for her to, you know, support me in a variety of ways. So that is always key. Sometimes even if it is a single person, the impact of that one person, like I will always be grateful to her and the stand she took to like pick me up off the floor and like really get me to slowly like get my life back on track post the miscarriage. She knows I love flowers, so she got me a bouquet of flowers for the loss, and I still have that bouquet. I dried it. It's still sitting on my, you know, like buffet in the dining room. Nobody knows, like my partner knows, but nobody knows why it's there. They just look like dry, but I know, and they're there for me. And it reminds me of a moment in time that I experienced this very challenging thing. And I was so lucky to have a person in my life who was able to show me love and care in this way. So Yeah. Like we like to put stuff on our walls and tables that are happy. We don't like to put stuff on our walls and tables that are sad. And I was kind of like, fuck that.
Yep.
Because I'm not just always like
sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, like that's not me. So that's not my life.
Well, and like there is a piece of that is I was supported. I was loved. I was pregnant.
Yeah.
Those can be memories that you want to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think science is the most amazing thing. I would say this is where miscarriage is incredible. Like, well, people think like you're supposed to kind of get over quickly, but I found out a couple years ago on a TikTok.
Love.
Yeah. That basically, whenever you are pregnant, your body does like exchanges cells. And that cell exchange means that your body now has the cells from that pregnancy within you. And those cells serve a variety of functions. And one of them is to repair and heal areas in your body that you might still be like dealing with. But most importantly, those cells, even if the pregnancy was terminated, stay in your body for up to like, I think they said like they've seen it as far as 30 years.
Wow.
So if you decide to have another pregnancy and, you know, that child will have the cells from that previous fetus in their body. And I was like I remember shaking and sobbing, like reading this study and watching this video. And I was just like, okay. Like,
yeah,
the body remembers.
Yep.
The body knows. Why won't we let that memory exist outside of the body? Like, our body literally is saying, hey, something happened. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Because sometimes we don't know why the body does what it does. It's just part of the journey. But
it's part of the journey, as in it also creates the next step.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really love that.
I know.
really love that. Because I think, again, we could all use just a little bit more education on what our bodies do. It's weird up in here. Like, we really have no idea
especially
what goes on.
Women's bodies.
Yeah. And how drastically hormones and pregnancy and fertility affect the rest of your body and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Like just the right amount of stress can literally make people infertile, and I feel like nobody actually talks about it enough. That's again a whole other conversation. It sounds like we need more of Niveen's mom and Niveen's best friend in this world. Sounds like a lovely human. I'm thankful that you have. When it comes to the digital space, did you have any places where you looked where you would suggest that people try to find these communities?
Reddit was a good space for me, I'll be honest, at the time. But I would say this is 7 years ago. So TikTok wasn't around. Insta was not like that real kind of type, like was not around. So it was still pretty like isolated. Forums was the closest you got to that in terms of, you know, connecting with other folks from across the world who have gone through something like this and have created space, a digital space for you to share this information with. It doesn't make the pain less, obviously, like today with having access to that information. But I'm hoping that it reduces the stigma, removes the walls and the barriers from just everyday life, from friends being able to talk to friends about it. You know?
Reduces the shame. Like
shame.
To witness people who you look up to or see as good go through something that you have been through that you might think has made you not good. It helps you level set.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is it easier to talk about now, 7 years later?
No, because I was sobbing writing my answers. And these questions are hella tame.
Yeah. They are pretty tame. I tried to be nice.
Tame. Like,
I tried to be nice.
So tame. They're like, how did you feel about this? Oh my God. Like,
yeah.
Like even just telling you the story about my best friend and the flowers, or thinking about my family and my
I got a little choked up. I'm not going to lie.
Oh my God. I was hysterical in my like bedroom. I'm like, I'm like, okay, so I think I'm going to need to like tell the story to myself a few times to get to regulate my nervous system a bit so that I'm not a puddle on this podcast. But I knew it was a very puddle friendly podcast.
Yes.
So
very puddle friendly here. It would have not been the first time I cried. I kind of really love that answer because I feel like I've asked that question a few times on this podcast. Does it ever get easier to talk about? And commonly the answer is yes. The more I talk about it, the easier it is. And I like that your answer is different and honest because I don't think it needs to be easy in order to continue talking.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting emotional. I'm so thankful for this conversation.
Oh, thank you.
I feel very happy to have been able to learn from you and learn from your mom and your best friend and your story. And I really, really hope that there's people out there listening who are doing what I just said, comparing themselves to this wonderful, bright, sunshiny human and going, she shouldn't feel shame for what she went through. And so neither will I. Neither should you. Correct. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Niveen. Where can people find you online? How do they stay connected?
So you can find me on TikTok, Niveen84. You can find me on Insta under my shop Rashida. But otherwise, hopefully our paths cross in real life as well. Outside of the virtual world. But
if you need a warm human to speak to. She's truly wonderful. I will make sure that everything is linked so that people can find your stuff. Her jewelry is gorgeous. I know that's not what this episode is about, but I really think you should go shop her jewelry as well.
Thank you.
Please download and leave a review. It really helps us for this pod, or you can find us and interact at Say It I Dare You Pod on TikTok and Instagram. If you have any episode requests or guest requests, hit us up. And we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Niveen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.